They shook your hand with a smile, but in their other hand, they held the knife. They called you brother, but only while you were useful. They clapped for your victorious until your victorious outshone theirs. Most people call it paranoia, but Machiavelli called it wisdom. The most dangerous illusion we're sold is this: that loyalty is sacred, that friendships are unconditional, that kindness guarantees safety. But in the game of power, no one is truly your friend, not in the way you hope. Look. Every alliance, every smile, every "I've got your back," it's not built on love, it's built on leverage. Even affection has an economy. Even intimacy has its price. People align with you because you serve a function: emotional, financial, social, psychological. The moment that function ends, so does the illusion. You've felt this before: the friend who disappeared after you set a boundary, the coworker who changed when you got promoted, the lover who stopped calling once you stopped chasing. This isn't pessimism. This is the beginning of freedom. Once you see clearly, once you stop playing the fool, once you stop leading for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage, you change. You start walking like a strategist, not a servant. You move like a lion, not a lamb. Yes, you may feel alone, but that loneliness is clarity. And in that clarity, a new kind of power is born. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly in the comments. Who still stands beside you when you're no longer convenient? Who claps when you rise? And more importantly, who hides their applause and hopes you fall? This video is not about cynicism. It's about awakening, because what Machiavelli knew, and what most people fear to admit, is this: no one is your friend, and that's your greatest advantage. No one wakes up hoping to be betrayed, but betrayal doesn't arrive with a scream. It walks in quietly in the form of absence, in the silence of someone who once swore they'd never leave. You called them a friend. Machiavelli would call them a temporary alliance, because in the real world, loyalty isn't built on love, it's built on leverage, on need, on usefulness. So ask yourself, who feeds off your presence? Who wins when you're silent? Who shines brighter when you're standing still? Most people don't love you. They love the way they feel when they re next to you. And when that feeling fades, so does their allegiance. Picture two men in the royal court of Florence, toasting to loyalty, swearing brotherhood, smiles wide, hands clasped but under the table. Both grip a dagger. Only one will rise, and the other will vanish. Machiavelli saw this daily. Nobles who bowed by day and conspired by candlelight. He understood that loyalty is not unconditional, it is rented, never owned, paid in currency, fear, admiration, opportunity, advantage. When the rent isn't paid, the smile fades. The applause stops, the mask slips. This isn't bitterness, it's vision. Because when you see the transaction, you stop mistaking proximity for trust. You stop confusing praise with respect. You stop thinking silence means support. Loyalty sounds sacred, like something carved in stone, like a bond forged in fire. But in the real world, loyalty has a cost, and people only pay that cost while the reward is still worth it. Machiavelli saw it clearly. He wrote, "Men forget the death of their father more easily than the loss of their inheritance." People aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to the feeling they get from youthful access, the elevation, the sense of advantage. And when that benefit ends, so does the illusion. The friend who promised you'd always be close. The partner who whispered, "I'll never walk away." The team who shouted, "We rise together." Now ask yourself, where are they now? Gone. Not because they lied, but because the terms of the unspoken contract expired. You were taught to forgive, to give the benefit of the doubt. And you did. You let it slide when they insulted you. You stayed silent. When they took advantage, you kept giving, hoping that someday they'd finally see your heart. But they didn't. They saw your silence as permission, your generosity as a pattern, and your kindness. They used it as a lever to open every door they wanted, until they no longer needed you. Machiavelli would call this the most fatal illusion, because when you lead with kindness without power, you don't earn love, you earn entitlement. Kindness without boundaries, that's not virtue, that's bait. You were taught to feel everything, to cry when it hurts, to speak when it stings, to react, to defend, to explode. But the more you expressed, the more power you gave away. In the game of control, the first to react is the first to lose. Machiavelli didn't fear the passionate, he feared the still. The ones who bleed in silence, who smile in discomfort, who walk away without a word. They're not heartless. They're calculating. They know what most people never learn. A man who cannot master his emotions will always serve one who can. Power doesn't come from being understood, it comes from controlling perception. Machiavelli put it plainly. Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands. For everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are. You can't control the world, but you can control the story they tell themselves about you. Mastering perception means being unpredictable, not too easy to read. When people can't predict you, they prepare for the worst. Loyalty sounds like honor, but in the game of power, loyalty is not a virtue. It's a variable, and variables cannot be trusted. Machiavelli didn't depend on affection. He depended on deterrence. He didn't need them to love him. He needed them to fear the cost of betrayal. Solitude is not a wound. It's a weapon. It turns your mind into a fortress, your energy into armor, your silence into strategy. When you stand alone, truly alone, you see what others can't. The illusions, the masks, the noise. You see how much of life is a stage, how much of connection is performance. You don't need more friends. You need more space. You don't need more applause. You need more clarity. Because when you rely on no one, you owe no one. And when you owe no one, you can't be controlled. Tired of being played by loyalty, kindness, and empty promises. Subscribe to Virtù and start building power, presence, and strategy that can never be taken from you. Join us and turn your silence into your greatest weapon.